¿Esa es la carpeta tuya o no?
La tuya.
Pero yo porque el martes que viene necesitaría yo un breve para poder informar a la Junta Directiva de la RDI.
A ver, pues lo primero que se ha presentado son los nuevos estatutos, ¿vale?
¿Los nuevos estatutos qué? Dicen.
Nada, que ya ahora que es
Tienen personalidad jurídica.
ya está. Dicen lo mismo que decía el reglamento que tenía, pero y lo único que se constituye en Francia, y hay que tener en cuenta que el que se constituye en Francia tiene implicaciones, pues por ejemplo, si los donativos vienen desde Estados Unidos, no le interesa a Estados Unidos dar los donativos, pues no se desgravan. Tú piensas que en España le interesa a las empresas donarnos fondos porque se desgravan, pero si los fondos que tú das se van a una entidad que está en otro continente, ya no desgravan. Entonces se ha debatido ese tema.
¿Y qué se ha acordado?
No, nada, que ahora mismo esto tiene que tener una obligación y que porque lo más fácil era hacerlo en Francia. Si luego se quiere cambiar, que se cambie, pero ese problema lo vamos a tener igual en todas partes. Ahora, si hay muchos fondos de Estados Unidos, pues claro, lo cambiamos a Estados Unidos. Porque ahora mismo todavía no hay iniciativa, entonces no vamos a crear un problema de algo que no existe. Y luego han presentado el acuerdo de entendimiento entre RDI y la red. Este acuerdo es un acuerdo en el cual se recoge que va a continuar haciendo el servicio de gestión económica, pagando el impuesto de Paloma y el almacenaje de la web, el hosting de la web, durante 5 años. Y durante un año ahora les va a garantizar el funcionamiento 2019. Va a catar todo, pero a partir de entonces la red sería totalmente independiente. Ahí he hecho una votación y he dicho que pues es importante que empecemos a pensar en cómo se funciona la red de otro modo. Y sobre todo lo que le he dicho es que tenían que contemplar que podíamos hacer las unidades como colaboraciones. Porque a lo mejor nosotros dinero no podemos dar, pero les podemos dar.
We're going to do a small collection. Everybody that's here, don't forget. This is absolutely wonderful. Good afternoon, and thank you folks so very much. So this is a follow-up in terms of our morning. We had the Rare Disease International. We had our AGM, our Extraordinary General Assembly meeting this morning, and we had an opportunity to speak with the members in terms of where our action plans are going in terms of next year. And we're really happy to be able to open up the session for other people to participate with us. But I will tell you honestly, we did not expect this many people here. So half of you will have to leave and we'll come back to the second part of the afternoon. Now, my name is Gerard Longreaker, and I am President and CEO of the Canadian Organization for Rare Disorders, but also it's my immense pleasure to serve as the Chair of the Council for Rare Disease International. And just to let you know that what we did do today, to say officially, is that we approved the statutes that would move RDI from being entirely a project within your orders to becoming a standalone legal entity. So this is a huge step. It will not become official probably until about the beginning of next year, but it will allow us then to actually be able to take on many more responsibilities and opportunities, but also hopefully to be able to truly be a presence on that global stage. So thank you so very much for all that. And it means, of course, there's increased opportunities for all of our corporate members to fund. So it's just an open appeal for sponsorship. It really is. So those of you who have corporations that have international offices, now you can support RDI, and then you can also have your local offices supporting us at a national level. So this is even better. It's increased opportunities to demonstrate your support for the rare disease patient community. So this is very exciting. Now this is also very exciting for us because we want to make sure that we're going to be functioning as a multi-stakeholder entity as well. And this afternoon, we're really going to focus on our programs at the international level. I think as many of you will know, RDI began as a project of Eurotas, and Eurotas over the years, of course, has increasingly become international. I mean, certainly for us in Canada and for many of the other national alliances who are outside of the EU, we have been associate members of Eurotas for many years. I always say, if it had not been for NORD, there would not be a Eurotas. If there had been for Eurotas, there would not be many of us here. So this has been a huge expansion opportunity. But over the years, I think, and as we know, Eurotas has increasingly provided resources and support for other organizations outside of the EU, but the growing awareness of the need for a truly international alliance of the patient organizations as well as the international disease organizations for several reasons. One, of course, to allow Eurotas to continue to focus on the expansion of rare diseases within the EU and to really make sure that that's their primary focus. The second thing, of course, is that from the point of view of where we were heading, the importance of having a global entity that could also relate directly with other global entities, which would include obviously programs and projects within the UN, including UNICEF, UNESCO, WHO, other programs. So it would allow us to have a direct relationship at a global level with any of these entities. So our Rare Disease International as a project was set up, but as we said, increasingly important that RDI be a legal entity that could also have legal status within many of these organizations. The third thing, and there are probably many more than just three, obviously, but the third thing that I think we wanted to make sure, and certainly driven by the patient community, but also following through in terms of what's going to happen in the research community, in terms of the development, in terms of the therapeutic community, is the increasing recognition that we needed to also focus as we were improving the advancements in terms of rare disease, diagnosis, care, treatment in the developed countries, in Europe, in Western Europe, and in North America, that we do not leave behind. Those are in developing middle countries, those are just coming in to bring in their not make sure that we have the developments that are taking place, be conscious of our rare disease patients in other countries. So RDI can really focus on all of those levels, engaging those patient organizations, ensuring that as we're providing advances, everything from screening diagnosis all the way through to care and treatments, that it has within that whole scope the recognition that there are many patients that are outside of the developed countries. So this is something that's really important, and again, can become a focus of RDI. So we're really delighted to have all of you as part of this, and we're really delighted that there are so many people who are now coming in to help us in terms of moving this forward into the next step. As I said, we had a very exciting, engaging program this morning. Really had a great opportunity to really talk about what we're doing. Let me just, while we're here then, because we have an opportunity later on, just to introduce the Council of Rare Disease International. And I'll just sort of recognize all the people that are here. Jan LeCamp, who's conveniently stood up, is obviously, as many of you know, and he's just moving over. So obviously all of you know Jan as yours and has stayed on, obviously, as a council member and serves on our executive group there. I'll just go in order across the room. But Ritu Jain, who's from Dover International. Well, maybe I'll just introduce you just for comfort. Yeah, sure, Sam. Ritu served for 1 year in between and has now been just elected as a 3-year term to the council. Next to Ritu is Lisa Phelps, and Lisa has been on the council for 3 years, one of our original founding council members, and has just been re-elected to a 3-year term, so happy to have Lisa there. in the audience, there's some KP Sang. Where's KP? Ah, yes, KP Sang from both. There you go. International Hong Kong Alliance for Patient Organization. So KP is was elected last year into a 3-year term, and we're really delighted to have KP there. And Anna Lecheva, where's Anna? Where'd Anna go? She was here all morning, so I'm sure will be back in a second. We're delighted to have Angela, who is from Colombia, who's just been recently elected to the council as well. And Alfredo, who is not here, but he was a representative from Ibero-America. Okay, so that's our council, and we're really, really delighted. And of course, all of you know Paloma Tejada, who is our RDI director. Stand up. Paloma, come on. Yay! As we unrolled our plan of activities for 2018, the first question that came out was, how the heck are you going to do that with one staff member? And we said very proudly, yeah, but you don't realize that staff member is Paloma. It makes all the difference in the world in terms of having a staff member like Paloma, who not only can serve in multiple functions, but also knows how to leverage support from all the very best. No, we really continue to have, as we're going through this transition period, tremendous support from the Aurora staff, many ways very directly, but also many ways indirectly as well, from the finance, from the administration, from communications, from policy development. So a lot of this actually does come as well. And also from many of our member organizations who are real partners with us. So the challenge in terms of being part of RDI is that you're really expected to contribute and to work. And as we rolled out our plan of activities for 2018, we were very clear. I think Alba from Spain actually pointed very clearly, by voting for this plan of activities, you know that you have volunteered to actually participate in doing this. So we do rely, as a new organization, a very small staffed organization, as one that is made up mostly in terms of individuals who are already hugely committed to their own organizations. We rely on all of our community to be part of this. So we're delighted that you're here, and we're hoping that you're here because you're not only interested in hearing what we're going to do, but you're very interested in taking part in many of these activities as we're moving forward. So thank you very, very much. Now, without much further ado, we actually are going to walk into some of the things that we want to present to you. We're going to start with some brief presentations around the RDI Advocacy Committee and RDI Policy Development, in which we will get an understanding of what the Advocacy Committee is doing and some of the policies that are being developed. I'm going to come back and briefly talk to you about the NGO Committee for Rare Diseases, which was set up in November of 2016, and it's actually going to be a huge opportunity for us to be able to advance rare diseases at that global level. And then we're going to have an afternoon that we're going to really start to talk about what it is that we're trying to do with the United Nations. And of course, nobody better than Jan, who's going to talk to us about not only what the vision of that will be, but where are the specific places within the United Nations programs and policies that we hopefully will be able to have rare diseases take a role, but also what we would like to be able to do beyond that. So it really is our opportunity to really see how we can bring rare diseases into the international stage. So I'm going to hand it over to Ritu, who's going to talk to us about the Advocacy Committee and the policies that we're already have developed and what we're hoping to be able to do.
Thank you, Doreen. So I'll take you through very briefly to the terms of reference and objectives of the Advocacy Committee. The general objectives of the Advocacy Committee are very much in line with the RDI's joint declaration, which is rare diseases an international public health priority. So the purpose of the Advocacy Committee, in addition to developing and recommending priorities and policies, the committee also prepares position papers and declarations for adoption by the RDI Council. And the composition of the Advocacy Committee is, there are 2 members of the RDI Council, Jan and I, and there are 13 patient advocates from RDI member organizations and advisors from IACO, all volunteers and staff members of umbrella patient groups. These are the members of the Advocacy Committee. This is the list. The chair of the committee is Jan, and there are 15 other members here. This is, of course, also on our website if you want to have a look. In addition, the Advocacy Committee also has a core drafting group, which is again Jan, who's the chair, and Simon from Eurotis, Mark from World Federation of Haemophilia, Kamaldeep, who's replaced Antonio from IOPO, Chiara from Maximon, and Paul from Nord. So the framework for the committee to operate, again on the website, but briefly, the RDI policy on developing, recommending, and adopting advocacy initiatives contain criteria, initiatives, and methods. And I'll share with you a little bit about these three aspects, the criteria, initiative, and methods. And if you want more details, you can access them on the website. So the criteria for advocacy priorities focus on areas of potential maximum impact, and they're centered around issues such as relevance to our communities, our judgments on advocacy priority best addressed at international levels or otherwise. Are these issues consistent with the joint declaration adopted by RDI? Are there aspects or areas of potential high impact? Are they a priority across more than one disease group or one area? And are they informed by a knowledge base supported by advocacy materials, in-house expertise, and financial resources? The types of initiatives accepted and adopted by the Advocacy Committee are contributions or comments and responses to public consultations, for example, comments on reports produced by the UN or stakeholders like ILDIC, etc. Statement of or recommendation, position papers, petition papers, discussion papers, etc. are also engagements of the Advocacy Committee. The state-of-the-art rare diseases activities report is another focus, as are policy briefings and advocacy tools provided to RDI members and volunteers. Oral and written statements, side meetings in the UN sessions, as well as WHO World Health Assembly, these are some of the areas of focus. And of course, the RDI policy event, that is a rare disease day, is an example. So how are positions endorsed and adopted? So what is the process? The Advocacy Committee reviews an existing position and either adopts or recommends for adoption by the Council. So the Advocacy Committee either asks the core drafting group, which I just shared a little bit about earlier, or appoints an ad hoc group to initiate the first draft, and these are then reviewed by the Advocacy Committee and offered to the Council for adoption. The Advocacy Committee develops a final draft and submits to the Council with recommendations for adoption. So the process, briefly, is that RDI generates a position paper or contributes to a position paper proposed by a member or an external stakeholder for joint co-signing on that, or adopts an existing position without contributing to the content, and provides its official support to the producer of this position paper, which is then adopted by the majority of the RDI members. So members are consulted on adoption with an opt-out option of 10 days, and the lack of opt-out automatically includes support or agreement on the issue or position paper. These are some of the advocacy initiatives of the committee from the year 2017 and ongoing. And these include responses to the consultation on WHO's draft note, the general program of work, etc. But for this, I am going to ask Jan to come up and elaborate on these. So this and the next existing positions that are being considered, these are aspects that perhaps Jan would like to elaborate in his presentation. So thank you very much. If you have questions, please. We're ready. Thank you.
encouraging. This is like, you know, red meat to the to the base here as we're talking about it. So I'm not sure. Or we might do it the other way. I'll toss it out and whoever catches it has to raise an intelligent question. How's that? So are we going to just continue with presentations for the moment? Okay. Okay.
Let me call the questions at the end.
So I'm going to just take the opportunity then. Thank you very, very much. And we will have more discussion on the policy statements. And I think huge kudos actually to the Advocacy Committee in terms of coming together with these policy inputs, because as we are talking with global organizations and as we're talking with the WHO and the UN, the fact that we are able to contribute to many of the programs and policies that are there and to provide commentary, I think is really a huge asset to us getting rare diseases into that global agenda. I mean, I'm not sure how much, and I know Jan will have a great opportunity to talk about it a great deal more, but just to say, I had the privilege of being able to attend with Clara and I think she calls it Hairbus, but it's Hairbus, a good number of meetings with the different missions at the United Nations to really talk about what it is that we're trying to do in terms of inserting rare diseases within the global framework. And I think it's, you know, it is important because people really want to know, what are you doing already? What have you already contributed? Where are your policies and positions? And the Advocacy Committee has worked very fast and very hard in order to be able to take advantage of opportunities to have input. And it gives us then a great deal more, not only credibility, but it also offers us some concrete ways in which rare diseases do fit into, I think, these many agendas. So what I'm going to present to you is something that's a slightly different vehicle, which is a hugely important vehicle, we believe, in terms of, again, advancing rare diseases within that global stage and certainly within the UN. So this is the NGO Committee for Rare Diseases. I don't know how many of you know about the Congo or the NGO committees that exist within the UN. I certainly knew nothing about it until we actually had the opportunity to have this set up. It is, in fact, what we say is that the Congo actually has space for non-governmental organizations to have committees that then allow them to have some official capacities for introducing programs, policies within the United Nations. So it's actually quite powerful. I think we are 100th committee, is that right, Anders? Yes, okay. Somewhere between 3 and 100. We're okay. It's recognized as a substantive committee under the umbrella of the Conference of NGOs in consultative relationship with the United Nations with Congo. So it's really an official committee that actually then can actually work in consultation with the UN. The goal for us in terms of the NGO committee is to promote rare diseases as a priority in global health, research, and social and medical care as part of the UN 2030 Agenda, the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. So this is hugely important because certainly, I think as you will know, we've not had rare diseases as part of any of these global initiatives to date. And certainly for us also, it opens up the possibilities of relationship with other UN groups, including the World Health Organization. So this is hugely important. So who's involved in this? Actually, this is an initial initiative of the Grenska Foundation and Reuters, and Anders Olsen, who is here from the Grenska. Without Anders, quite frankly, we would not have an NGO committee. Let's be real clear. Anders actually has been in, and the Grenska has been in consultative relationship with the UN and as organization for a good number of years. I think this has been a vision of Anders for a very long time, to be able to have a committee or to have an entity that can actually be a part of that. And I think quite rightly, it all kind of came together at the right moment. So huge kudos to Anders for opening up that door and continuing to maintain that kind of presence that we have. So between Anders and Jan, in terms of really being able to open up the opportunity for rare diseases to be part of that. We're supported by 34 NGOs from Congo, driven by civil society. It's a multi-stakeholder committee, so it's not just a patient organization. And and it allows us then to actually be a forum, as we say, for interested NGOs, ECOSOC members, UN bodies, and individual experts to actually come together in this NGO committee to collaborate and to consider the kinds of policies and programs that we can actually bring forth into not only the United Nations, but the other bodies that are there. It really helps us to go not just recognizing rare diseases as a health issue, but rare diseases as a social issue, as a development issue, as an educational issue, as an economic issue, and hopefully engaging many of those entities. The objectives then to increase visibility of rare diseases at the global level, obviously very, very important, to extend and share knowledge about rare diseases and their unmet needs. Again, something that gives us a great platform to do that. Connect NGOs interested in rare diseases and their partners within a global platform. So again, speaking together, speaking with one voice, but also advancing together, share policies and programs. Promote international multi-stakeholder collaboration and actions for rare diseases. And I really do want to emphasize that what we're hoping to do is actually advance actions, not just coming together. Align rare diseases as a global priority in public health research and medical and social care policies. And I think as Claire and I recognize in those meetings, that ain't as easy as it sounds. Many of these agendas are set. Many of these entities have programs and things in places. And the question is, how does rare diseases fit in there? What are the ways in which we can make sure that rare diseases are not only recognized within those, but how do we have a space there to give input and inform policy within the UN system at various levels, at the ECOSOC, economic and social development level, WHO, UNESCO, IMF, etc. So really trying to bring rare diseases into the official global platform. What will this NGO committee do? I'm not going to go into great detail, but as you can see, what we want to do is to be able to highlight current or potential opportunities for integration among all stakeholders, create synergies with other Congo committees. This is very important. There are other committees that are there. How can we collaborate and work with them? We had a great opportunity when we were in New York to meet with the committee that's on aging, which was actually quite interesting, not something that we had naturally thought about before. Encourage relevant UN bodies to better reflect aspects related to rare diseases into their mission and actions. Again, as we say, not necessarily intuitive for many of them as to why rare diseases is important. Host dedicated events to share information, raise profile, develop and present reports, recommendations for actions and positions. This is absolutely very important to have Congo, the NGO committee, be able to do that. Collect and share up-to-date information and research. So this is how it relates as well to other things that we're doing within RDI and the other national organizations. Why get involved in this committee? So this is a direct outreach to everyone here. Why should you actually take an interest and perhaps take a role in terms of the NGO committee? And it really is a multi-stakeholder committee. It's meant to be an international committee, so it's definitely patient groups, other NGOs, but also other stakeholders. And this is something, obviously from an NGO's perspective, strengthen and your voice as a pioneering global community, initiate dialogue with rare disease stakeholders, bring your expertise to the discussion. So as a member of the NGO committee, you're also able to use that to actually go in and visit, maybe in your own country, maybe with other stakeholders within your country. What are the ways in which we want to be able to work collaboratively on rare diseases? For national governments, really an opportunity to have them become engaged in terms of policies and programs, etc., on the rare diseases. And then also United Nations representatives. So now having an NGO committee is a focus in which we can get members, representatives of the UN to actually participate with us in an entity that is focused entirely around rare disease. So as much as we want to also insert rare diseases into the other UN, WHO programs and agencies that are there, we also now have a vehicle in which we can invite others to contribute with us on a focus on rare diseases. So this is hopefully going to provide us with a different way of which we can bring rare diseases into a global environment. And this is the committee then, and has regular members, observer members, individual members, supporter members, associate members. History of the committee, just very briefly, accepted as a Congo committee in 2015, March 2016 with bylaws, April 2016, contacts within the UN. November 2016, we had our inaugural meeting, which was a wonderful event at the United Nations, attended by many of the UN agencies that were there, had huge contributions from others within the Sustainable Development Goals who really hoped to express in their own words why rare diseases was important in terms of the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN. And it really allowed us, I think, to be able to present how rare diseases fits into that global agenda. And November 2017, the Inception Executive Board is set up. And these are the initial members of that Exception Board: Brenska, Eurotas, IAMPO, World Federation of Hemophilia, Spina Bifida, Rare Disease International, and what's it?
Women.
Oh, women. Yeah, sorry, women. It's hard to see it in that color.
They are important.
They are important. Thank you very much. Women are really important. Thanks to Anders says so, so therefore we know that women have now achieved a status in there because Anders has now endorsed women. Thank you, Anders. But really, it does speak to the fact that we've got not only, you know, sort of within the rare diseases space, but also Spina Bifida is a huge asset for us because they're a member within the disabilities program, the disabilities movement, the International Alliance of Patient Organizations, because honestly speaking way beyond just the rare diseases, but other patient groups. So it really is a multi-stakeholder collaboration. And we're looking to, I think, expand that. We will actually be looking at how we can begin to enlarge that committee. But really for us, it's a great opportunity in terms of starting. This was the global gathering that we had where we introduced this in November 2016. You can see the picture there at the UN. It really is an awesome event, and you can see that we had all the many different agencies that were among the United Nations, those representatives of Sustainable Development Goals who came not only to hear us, but actually speak on behalf of what their group was about, but also how it could relate to their diseases. So it was a great opportunity, and of course, broadcast broadly. We had tremendous feedback from the quality of that gathering, so this is very important. The next event we're hoping to have will be Rare Disease Day 2019 in New York, where we're hoping to have another kind of an event at the United Nations in celebration of Rare Disease Day as a global entity. Don't know the exact date, has to fit in somewhat with the timing of the UN. But what we want to do there then is again have the members of the NGO committee to be able to discuss what have we achieved, what are some of the challenges, how have we been able to integrate so far. Again, by having this event at the UN headquarters to be able to raise the awareness of rare diseases within the different agencies and obviously the embassies within the United Nations, and attract other NGOs or relevant actors as potential partners of the NGO Committee for Rare Diseases. So hopefully being able to invite others to be part of that. What is required? What we will have to have, and this is one of the things we're in New York, raising awareness and engaging others, we need to have one or more sponsoring national permanent missions to book the room. We had 5 to help us in terms of securing the room at the last event. We need support of a permanent mission to host or provide a location for drinks reception. Oh, I'm not sure. This is an invite for people to step forward. If you know somebody who would like to do it, last time we had it at the Belgian Embassy. It was really quite a successful event. And we want to make sure we have as many members of the permanent missions as speakers or in the audience as possible. We really want to be able to engage the countries in order to support rare diseases moving forward. Our strategy: create a favorable environment within the United Nations in a year, organizing side events to UN meetings, or reducing inputs such as declarations, papers, comments to the United Nations consultations. So I think what you two has already presented to you are some of the policies or position papers or the feedback into consultations that are taking place. There's some high-level meetings that will be taking place around NCDs, around disabilities, that we hope to be a part of. So again, being able to provide informed input into those different kinds of initiatives or programs that are taking place. And definitely want to get as many of the UN member states as possible to become engaged with us. I mean, obviously for us, having the UN and member states endorsing is an opportunity for each and every one of us in our own countries to be able to pull down on that, to be able to take it back into our own countries to say, here's what is happening at the global level, here's what the UN is saying, here's what the WHO is saying about rare diseases. Now, how are we actually incorporating that? How are we actually following up that in terms of our own country, in terms of our own programs and policy? Because that's where we really are going to be able to see that action. But be able to have that global platform. I mean, we all know what's happened in terms of, you know, HIV/AIDS. We know what's happening in many of the communicable diseases. We've seen what the power of the NCD Alliance has been, and now that the NCD Alliance has gotten a foothold into the United Nations, we need to see the power of those, and this is what we want to be able to leverage in terms of rare diseases. How do we get rare diseases into that same space? How do we get that kind of international, global awareness of the unmet needs in terms of rare diseases, the huge opportunities in terms of serving rare disease to actually be able to improve not only the health and welfare of the people, but also to improve the economic, and social, and the other kinds of educational levels in each of our countries. We want to be able to be on that level. And this is one of the very important vehicles by which we are going to be able to make that level happen. Our intermediate goals is to have good connections with the different agencies and bodies, and I think we really have begun to do that. I think we've been able to come in a way that shows we can actually contribute to those agendas, that we can become a part of that agenda, and that we can actually not only get a great deal from them, but we can actually help in terms of meeting their own goals and needs, as I said. And this is something that at the NCD Alliance on the disability movements are going to be two important opportunities for us to think about how rare diseases can fit into those agendas, and to also then be able to pull a bit in terms of their support for us. Sorry. Is that it? Active contributors seen as added value, obviously, highlight success of the rare disease community. This is really important because what we want to be able to do, and we heard this morning the huge kinds of advances that many of our patient organizations and other stakeholders in the different countries are making, not just in Western Europe and not just in North America, but in many of the, we heard Kelly talk about what's happening in terms of South Africa, we heard some of these are happening in Iran. These are hugely important initiatives. Colombia, Argentina, etc. The more that you're doing in your own countries to actually be able to engage and incorporate rare diseases in terms of the policies and programs there, the more we're able to draw upon that, the more we're able to use that to also go into the missions to also be able to help our agenda on that global stage, and the more that it becomes part of that mission circle to actually be able to improve more. So everything that you're doing at your own levels and within your own organizations are really huge assets in terms of what we can do to leverage at the global level, and hopefully what we're doing at a global level can contribute in terms of what RDI can do and what we can do collectively. So, is that it? Oh my gosh, there's more slides here. Oh, what are we doing? There's too many slides here. So RDI is now a member, we can produce, so this has been very important. We're looking to get consultative status so we can actually become a part of the UN ECOSOC, and this is going to take us a few years, but again, this whole move towards independence and independent legal status is really important. This is some of the other things that we're trying to do in terms of next step of integration, and obviously the advocacy in terms of different countries. Again, if connections that you have to your own ministry, foreign affairs, ministry of health, permanent representation, the more you're doing that at your level, the more we're able to leverage on that. And every time we went in to go to a mission, the question we're always asked is, and what are your members doing in terms of our country? What are you doing back home? What are you doing back in Geneva? So the more you're connected, the more we're able to, at an international level, be able to build on that. And I truly think that's it. Thank you very much. Okay, so now we come to the highlight of the afternoon. We're going to hand it over to Jan, who's going to talk to us about what's happening at the UN, at the Human Rights, and in terms of the Council on Disability.
Hello, Diana. Thanks for joining us. This is really fantastic. You sound like a TV anchor, when we could just throw news to you and then you could keep talking about different things. Thank you for doing that. I think it's very exciting to see this room full of friends and new faces, and somehow it's not so surprising because it's quite historic if we think back of the launch of RDI 2015 that was in Madrid with Juan and Alba, who are here, when we launched the Rare Disease International at the moment of the membership meeting of the orders in 2015. And now 3 years later, here we are in Vienna with the decision of legal incorporation. And we shouldn't take all these steps as just tick the box and it's easy and it's great. We will remember that 10 years from now, I'm sure. Not only Clara, for sure, but we will all remember that as moments where we're putting together the achieve our goals, and this is what counts. The 2018, I think, is also the moment of reaching a critical mass. With the 53 members of RDI, we're covering more than 100 countries for sure, and a large number of diseases. Only through the national alliances like NORD and NORDIS and the major ones in the world, we obviously cover more than 4,000 rare diseases. So that's very helpful. Before we enter into advocacy, is that now we have a legal and moral personality. We have the credibility of existing with a small track record of 3 years, and we have the legitimacy of speaking on behalf of this membership. Now, what will make the difference is the level of commitment of some of you, both at the national level in promoting some of this international action or aligning international action, and some of you engaging at international level. This is how we're going to achieve things. Is the more we're going to grow this community, the more we're going to be strong and achieve goals. And when I see this room, I'm confident. I know we're going to make it because it works. And every time that's worked like that in the past, it always works. So we can go back home tonight. I'm very confident that we'll try. Yeah, exactly. The other historic moment, one has been mentioned, reminded by Doreen, was 2016, 11 November, when we had this meeting at the UN. It was really a very special feeling that for the first time we were planting the flag of rare disease at the UN. So somehow you can take it as a joke, as a gimmick almost, that at the end, what's the point? What does that mean? It means that we're starting to have social recognition in the international arena. And that means a lot, because the more we have this international recognition, the more we can hold to that to have national recognitions. And the less there will be discrimination of people, and the more there will be access for people. So that's what it means. And I'm very proud that by next year there will be another historic moment on Rare Disease Day, where we will have a big event, a bigger event at the UN on rare diseases. And this time we'll not be big boys yet, but teenagers, let's say, coming back, this time with a bit more strength, and I hope we'll see a lot of you. So as soon as we have the date, we'll communicate that to you, because I think that being numerous from the patient groups from around the world, but also from the different stakeholders, will be extremely important. We want to move the agenda of rare. Thank you, Jean-Louis. That's always nice to see you. It's great. So Jean-Louis who is also working as a with the assistance of Yukiko, which is always a good friend, right, when it comes to so that would be tremendous, because something specific that you don't see for all the social health activities at the UN, something specific for rare disease, a key success factor, has been when we've been working with the different stakeholders, when we're working on the same agenda. We have different interests, that's clear, but we have common objectives, and we know how to collaborate. So that's what we need to do also at international level. Last words of introduction about it is that we are at a turning point, 2018. Turning point in our relationship with the UN system. So we're clearly at the bottom of the ladder, I think. We're only starting, right? So we're starting very small, but we're starting. And we're starting now with different, that's what I will try to show you. We're starting to come into the UN system with different entry points. And I want to explain why we do that. Because we cannot just say we want a United Nations resolution on rare diseases. Okay, we want that. But it's going to take time. We never said it's going to be overnight. We never said it's going to be 2 years. It's going to be 5 years if we are extremely lucky. It's going to be 10 years if we work hard and if we are lucky. Nothing will be given to us. That's also obvious. We know it from everything we do for disease or locally at national level. Nothing is never given. We can see from our first experiences in the UN system that nothing will be given to us neither. So what we need in order to get there is that we need to create an environment into the UN system. We need to plant seeds. We need to create hooks in different parts of the system in order to create a framework to get to the resolution. But at the same time, we don't want only to create this policy framework. That's going to be extremely boring, and we are much more pragmatic people. So at the same time that we're doing that, we're going to need to focus progressively on smaller actions, smaller stones that can be concrete and deliver something for people on the way. Okay, so that's the general idea on how we're trying to work out of these activities. So now it seems that I have pushed the slides at the same time. Shall I? What's that? That's your slides or my slides? No, that's your slides. That's your slides. Okay. That's your own slides. Okay, I thought I had my slides. Okay, so it's this one. Thank you. Okay, oops. Slideshow here. Sorry about that. You got it? Super, thanks. Okay, so now it's the quiz. The first quiz is to see if you have good eyes. So KP and Gabriel, you're out of the game. The second is the quiz to check if from last year you've learned about that chart. Because if you don't come back next year. No, to be serious, I just go back to these slides as a starting point as always, because we just need to have in mind always the complexity of the UN system, but also have some clarity about what are the actionable places for us. Not everything is relevant into this system clearly. So I will come back to that, but here on the top you have the General Assembly of the UN, and this is where it's important for us. This is where you have the potential resolution. This is where it will go, and below you have the Economic and Social Council. And this has been our strategy from the beginning: is to go in the UN system from the Economic and Social Council, so from NGO status, and then creating the NGO Committee of Rare Diseases, in order to go down from the UN to the agencies like WHO or like others. Security Council, that's not for us, except for our friends from Iran, maybe at the moment, but it's not for the rest of us.
This is literally insulting everybody.
Part of the Secretariat of the UN are relevant for us in the social and economic area also. And you have, at some agencies, are directly related to the General Assembly when others are reporting to Social Economic Committee. So bear with me so that you follow. WHO here, or World Bank, or International Monetary Fund, are linked to the Economic Social Committee, right? So whatever the Economic Social Committee adopt in terms of resolution at some point and mentions rare diseases, we can potentially reuse in these institutions, right? So it's trying to find the right places. Now, if we want to have an impact on the UN program for development, for instance, this is more with the level of General Assembly, if I'm correct. I don't see it from you. So that's to explain the overall mechanism. So in this complex system, what is our strategy? So I don't want to go into too much details. I want to give you more the sense of the action. The first thing is that we need to raise awareness about rare diseases. Nobody knows about rare diseases. Nobody cares about rare diseases. So that's the first thing we need to do into the UN system and act collectively to promote it as a health and social issue. Then to contribute to some UN relevant policy, what it means. If we get rare disease as a priority into the UN system, what are the consequences potentially? As you know, all that is soft law, so it doesn't immediately translate in any benefit at national level. But when you have policies adopted at UN level, then the member states are supposed to follow them. So progressively, some of the countries will follow, and progressively over time, things are changing. Also, the policy of the UN has immediate impact on the programs of the UN, like development program, and some of the agencies like UNICEF or WHO, for instance. Where we want to act, where we are positioning the cause of rare disease, that's very important, so that to see if you agree with that, if you feel comfortable with that, but that's what we're defining it, is to position rare disease into the human rights sphere. So we don't position ourselves first as a health issue, limiting our dialogue with WHO. We're positioning ourselves as a health issue. And remember, in the first meetings of RDI, or in the meeting in New York at the UN when we did it, what came first? Discrimination. Discrimination was mentioned by most of you as the primary issue, the first main issue they have. So it's a human rights issue, and we are accumulating vulnerabilities. So making that recognized is important, and I will describe how this positioning becomes then a strategic approach in the action. The second, which may not be so obvious, particularly if you think about your national actions, is to be also positioned in the disability sphere. Not to oppose. Obviously, rare disease will always be pushed into the sphere of health research, obviously, always at national level, European, international level. But disability, the policy on disability has decades of experience and strengths and experience in delivering into the UN system. So we need to work with the disability world within the UN, first to have a fit with rare disease, to recognize the specific needs of rare diseases, the multiple handicaps and disabilities of people with rare diseases, and then to adapt progressively the policy. So it's a matter of terminology, of language, of policy. So you're doing that, some of you at national level. You're fighting, we're all fighting at national level to get policies of disability and health more together, as we do between health and research. But doing it also from the UN level will have an impact down. It will take a decade again, but we need to start. And three, this is where it becomes more concrete and more immediate, is that because this human right and disability, this is for decades, right? The UN system has been built on this human rights thing. So, but what is more new is the Sustainable Development Goals agenda, which is the agenda between 2015 and 2030. And the main theme of that, the slogan, is leave no one behind. If it's no one, that's us. That's us, the rare, it's the one, right? So we don't want to be left behind. Universal health coverage is one of the big political agenda of the member states in the UN, and it's health for all. All should include us too. And to be present into some of the new debates about access to medicines, fair pricing, intellectual property debates, which are all emerging and taking place, as you know. And that's more the bubble of Geneva, around the WHO. And now more new is the emerging agenda of non-communicable diseases, which Julian was mentioning. So the Sustainable Development Goals, maybe I skipped this slide, I go directly to this one. You're probably now familiar with this one, which you saw 3 years ago already, but you get more familiar, I'm sure, even at national level, with this wheel of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And again, under the slogan, leave no one behind. So health, what is specific with this approach of the UN strategy for the next 15 years is to see the interactions between the different goals. So here, how good health and well-being interact with some of these SDGs. Now, let's look specifically at our case. We have interactions in the area of rare diseases with 8 Sustainable Development Goals. And that's not only us saying that, it's also the people in charge of Sustainable Development Goals at the UN. One is no poverty, which is a goal. And clearly there is a link, as we all know from our family experience and patient group experience, a link between the health challenge that we're facing and our vulnerability and our poverty. Also, the universal health coverage into the goal 3. If I take the goal 4, education, so all the access to school and university and training in order to be able to work later or to have teaching at home and all that kind of adapted approach. The goal 5 is on gender equality, and Duran and others were talking about the status of women and rare diseases just a few minutes ago. The gender equality is an issue in our area. Recognizing the value of unpaid care, which is mostly provided by the wife or by the mother, is very important. But also, in all the surveys we did in Europe, we see that the major statistical element is the difference between men and women. Time of access to diagnostic, recognition of pain, length of access to adapted treatment. Young girls and women are disadvantaged, so there is a gender issue. Decent work and economic growth, so we all know that's very important in our area. Industry, innovation, and infrastructure, that's important to us. Innovation of industry for medicinal products, for medical devices, the digital industry, the imaging industry, whatever, all these areas, we need these innovations. Reduced inequality overall, so discrimination is a key in this goal, and 17 is the partnership for the workers, and that way. So now some of the first results is that between 2015 and today, for instance now, we have in the staff of the UN Secretariat, in the Division of Economic Social Affairs, the director in charge of the area of health, of women and young and aging, all that, Adil Abbas, said rare diseases have a health and social impact. So they need to be considered, and they have a space in the United Nations agenda. So that's clear. We have a space there, and that's new. That's possible because there is the Sustainable Development Goals, and because there is the Living on 1 billion. So that's the message I want to pass. There is a window of opportunities that didn't exist 10 years ago, 5 years ago, which we are taking and pushing and playing as much as possible. And that's how it is progressing. Universal health coverage, some of you have already seen that slide, because that was a declaration of Helen Clark when she was the administrator of the UN Development Program. And what she said was, no country can claim to have achieved universal health care if it has not adequately and equitably met the needs of those with rare diseases. That's only words, but it's a good start when you have people high ranked in the UN system saying these words. And tomorrow, in the plenary session of the conference, there is Rudiger Kresch, who unfortunately, we just learned today, will not be able to attend because he's sick coming back from trip, but he sent his speech, and you will hear from his speech that there is very important words also in that direction. So now, concretely, how can we influence this UN system? And one is first to respond to consultations. So because we have RDI and RDI in the UN NGO Committee for Rare Diseases, now we are part of any consultation. We can say, I want to be consulted on that, I want to contribute to that. So that's one type of action, and to submit contributions. And this is where RDI play a key role, is that we can work on these contributions. We can generate position papers, white papers, whatever. Physical presence by being at meetings of the UN, for instance, the World Health Assembly, the meeting of Human Rights Convention, of disability, whatever, just to be there and to meet the people. Or mission, as we had last week, with Clara, who is here, and Duran, and Claudia Howard in New York, and they met different permanent missions of different countries and different people at the UN in order to promote, to oppose. And we do that now regularly. We have the next mission in June with Anders and Clara and Claudia, and then again in October we do it to prepare for the event in February. But the other way to influence the UN is precisely to have this NGO committee. It's a perfect shell to navigate the UN system. But it's also to apply for consultative status which we will do now that RDI has legal entity. We will be able to apply to that to have full recognition. Some of you are already recognized. Radwa is recognized. Thalassemia International Federation is. World Hemophilia Federation, Spina Bifida, and Anopheles International Federation is. So some of you have that recognition, and we're going to grow that so that we're going to be more influential in the system. So recent actions that we have been taking, that's why I say it's a turning point, is that we're playing both in New York and in Geneva. At the level of the committee of the convention, sorry, you see I'm still not, I don't pass the quiz, really. It's not the committee, it's the Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities, and it's the Human Rights Council in Geneva and the World Health Assembly in Geneva. So concretely, what has it achieved? This year there was a very important report. It's the report on the right to health. And for that, there is a commissioner who is commissioned for that, and calling for contributions. So the report is by Kate Gilmore from Australia. And we prepared a contribution called The Right to Health in Rare Diseases, a practical contribution to implementing and achieving SDGs. So this paper was drafted by Jean-Louis Roux, who was with us a moment ago. I don't know if he's escaping. He's back in the room. And with the team of Agrenska, several colleagues at Agrenska have contributed to this paper. And then it was reviewed by advocacy committee of RDI and submitted. We know they're going to take some elements of that. We're looking forward to see the report, but then the next step will be to table that statement in June at the next convention, and also to have a side event in Geneva. So we need to take additional steps to promote rare disease into this agenda of rights to health. A second example, to bring closer disability and rare diseases, there is a report from the UN Rapporteur on the rights of people with disabilities. So there is a permanent UN Rapporteur on the rights of people with disability. What is original is the first time there is a report in this policy environment of disability on health. So somehow we're lucky that it comes this year, and we have had initial discussions with them, and then we've been able to contribute to the report, and the final report will be presented in October 2018 at their General Assembly. So the drafting group was made of Raquel Castro and Emma from the Eurodis team, together with Agrenska again, and this was adopted by the RDI and at the same time by the NGO committee to contribute. The WHO now, and that would be my last point.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was just thinking about the two bridges. It's also worth mentioning that our contribution is well received from them.
Yes, you're right.
I think we should mention that.
Yes, maybe it's not
that we
yes.
have to hit them.
Yes.
We do that anyhow.
No, it's true. Andres is right. In fact, we see that we are welcome at several moments, because the way we work is that we don't send a contribution like that. We contact the people in advance, we try to understand what's the scope of their report, how they're going to work on the report, we tell them who we are, we tell them what's important to us. Then after that, we do our homework, we develop a contribution, then we send it. And it's true that so far, every time, they come back to us and they say, thank you, that's great. So they think we're doing good work when we contribute, right? So we're good boys and girls doing good work. But beyond that, it seems that, I agree with you on this, it seems that they see that there is an issue around rare disease and that there is something special to address, right?
This is very important because there is a need open now.
Yeah.
It's back what you said all the time.
Yeah. So I will not go into too much detail because we're starting to die in this room, which is very wrong. What I just want to explain is so that you understand again how we're moving on and how we can have an impact WHO has a new Director General, as you know from last year. So here what we did is that we did our homework also. We started from the early candidates of the WHO, the 7, that we have approached each of them, and then after we have approached the 3 finalists, so that when the one who was picking up as director, he knew about rare disease already, he couldn't ignore it, even if he didn't want to know, he had to know. So that prepares for the next step, which as a new Director General, he develops, as every Director General, the general program of work for the WHO for the period 2019-2023, which is based, guess what, on the Sustainable Development Goals and that new approach, which needs to be reflected on how the WHO is working. So that's why and how we have contributed. But then we sent a first letter to say, welcome, Director General, it's fantastic. When you're going to work on your program, you know, we're going to contribute, don't forget. Then they come with the public consultation, and we send a public consultation to their program. And after that, when they publish it, we say, we love it, but there is still that, that, and that. So that's how we're trying to move their agenda. So try to know, and maybe that's something we could share, Paloma, with our members, is that there is a board of WHO, which is composed of member states. So that's something we could share with all of you, because then you could identify who is representing your country and potentially have access to them. For instance, I'll just give one example. For Malta, there is a Malta representative on the board of the WHO, and I've already discussed with the colleagues from Malta how we could approach that person. So we contributed specifically on each of the priorities of the WHO, making the link for us with universal health coverage, with NCD agenda, children health, data collection, fostering access innovation. And now, my last slide is to explain that we've submitted, informally for the moment, an initial draft, which is already a bit killing. It's already, how many pages? It's, how many pages is the draft? 12? 20. Okay, 20 pages. So we sent 20 pages of why to act in which area, what is our ambition for 2030, what could be the concrete actions in the next 5 years within the work program, and then we say who could be the actors of these activities. So we have submitted that as a 20-page document for them for informal review internally, so that we know if we are in the right direction or not. Then the next step, after today's meeting, is that we will come back to the members of RDI, so to the advocacy committee, but also to all members. There will be a webinar where you will be consulted to contribute to that. So first the advocacy committee, and then all members to contribute to that document. The first thing is that we need to make sure that we are relevant. If you see something that you say, that's nice, but really it's not relevant, then we disregard that. If you see something which is really missing, then we can think about how to make it, to put it in. So that's what we need to do, and then we will submit it officially as a draft. Then they have already committed to organize a meeting at WHO with the different departments that are relevant to our letter, and then to have a discussion with them to see how can we put in place this collaborative framework. I have to say I'm very happy. In 2 years, I mean, it's huge. I know it's 2 years, it takes forever, but I mean, we're starting from nowhere. I remember a time when we were trying to have meetings at the WHO, and nobody wanted to see us. They said, no, because you don't fit. We're sorry, you don't fit. So you just ignored. And maybe I could share, to conclude, that anecdote that happened with Paloma at WHO. We had a meeting with 2 assistants of the Director General, which are the big heads of the departments. And you know how it is when you go for important meetings, like when you meet your ministers, is that you have the meeting, you don't have it anymore, it's at 10, it's at 9, it's at 8:30 before breakfast. So you don't know at the end what you have. So at the end we had the meeting and it was 10 minutes, okay? And then 1 hour was the start. And then what I said on your behalf was to say, okay, I know you only have 10 minutes, and I have 10 minutes to save 300 million people. So what I want is that when you leave the room, you just think, we need to work on that. I don't want you to, I want you to Because today you have an important choice to make. Leaving no one behind doesn't mean that you are ready to leave 200 million people accumulating vulnerabilities outside. Simply because it's difficult to address or difficult to see, you want to ignore them. That's the only question you have today. It worked. They could have snapped my face and said, you're badly educated. It worked. I was shaking. Then after that, I shared the story with Duran, and I said, I hope we did right. But what do you do when you have only 10 minutes to make your case? You cannot be nice. You cannot be nice, because then I will feel shame when I'm in front of you. And it has worked. We've gained friends. And I can tell you that now we have 4, 5, 6 friends helping. They are really communicating and helping. And we see them trying to help us to navigate into the system. And one translation of that was on Rare Disease Day. The Director General, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, published a statement on rare diseases. That's already something, a statement from the Director General. And he said that on Twitter, which, like Donald Trump understood, is very important. On Rare Disease Day, we welcome further discussions with the rare disease community on how we can strengthen cooperation to ensure people with rare diseases. So we welcome now, and that's all the difference. Thank you.
So now we come to the unscripted part. And really, we do want to be able to open up for discussion. We really want to engage and invite you to take part in terms of what we're doing here. And maybe I'll just start with, I don't know, Jan, if you have any real provocative questions to throw out, but I think, as we have seen here, rare diseases in some respects fits everywhere, but also rare diseases fits nowhere. And I think this is a big challenge. We also know that within the UN and within the WHO, there are already huge programs and commitments. And to some degree, as we said, rare diseases fit in well with them. On the other hand, some of this might be seen as a challenge to some of the others. And we didn't talk about, maybe I'll start there if you don't mind, with the NCD Alliance, because it might be an interesting spot for us to talk about where rare diseases fit in. But yes? Okay? Too soon? Okay, maybe we'll just open it up in terms of questions. Any questions or feedback from the group here in terms of what you can respond to? Any other suggestions? Yes. But while we wait, we'll make sure we get a microphone to people because it's a big group, so we'll try. And if you don't mind, when you're speaking, just introduce yourself as well. Oh, and someone said that, yes. Throw it out there. All right, here we go. Right there. That's a big throw, Jan.
I heard the microphone.
Yes.
My name is Elizabeth Tiberius from the Netherlands. I'm representing Stockholm-Diamond syndrome. And we have been very busy also to collaborate with lower and middle economies in Europe. And also now we try to do that globally. So we have recently been visiting Sri Lanka. And I see a large gap. Because in Sri Lanka there's no way to have DNA tests. No way to really diagnose like we in Holland do. So I was really glad that you were mentioning lower and middle economies. Not even in Asia, but even in Europe it's a big problem. And of course, I'm from the Netherlands. We are on the top of economic, and especially in health. And I would like, maybe you could give some guidelines on how we can help with our knowledge, the lower, because most of the people in the world live in lower and middle economies. And I would, first of all, I forgot to thank you for all these initiatives. I'm following it with great pleasure. Thank you for your work.
And certainly thank you for your comment, and also thank you for the bridge, as you say, into the other countries, because it really is going to be that deliberate outreach in terms of the other countries and the deliberate growing in terms of understanding what's there. So the challenge is, if we're talking about screening, we're talking about diagnosis, we're talking about those first stages, how do we make sure that countries where in fact there are maybe very few resources, almost no resources, almost no awareness, how do we make sure that we're including them as we're moving forward? And rather than my try to answer that, I'm going to just open it up as well in terms of time. Anders, did you want to speak?
I just think again, the door into all these countries is sustainable development goals, so the UN 2030 agenda, because all prime ministers in all the 193 member states of the United Nations have signed up for the SDG goals, and they take it very seriously. They do. So this is the door in which we can use and should use. And what your example was here, that can be one of the flavor or something that can be brought into that.
So certainly, as you say, leveraging the sustainable development goals. I know Clara and I, when we were meeting with many of these missions, I mean, when we talk about what it is that we're trying to do in terms of rare diseases, the real pushback comes as we're talking about some of these low and middle income countries. What can we do here, and what is actually doable here? And one of the things we were saying very strongly is that there are many strategies with regard to screening and diagnosis. And I think as our colleagues from Iran was saying earlier, and others were talking about, that understanding what are the rare diseases that are really endemic to that country, what are the high risks in terms of those countries, and are there ways of introducing screening and diagnosis programs that can actually intervene early, many of which can be done without the need for high technology. But there needs to be an awareness among the population and among certainly the first level of healthcare workers. Many of these, I think that we were talking this morning about the commission to end the pediatric odyssey to diagnosis. And part of that is really going to be focusing on not only how can we leverage some of the technology, and technology could be widely available internet-wide, but also looking at strategies that require almost minimal technology. So, I mean, we've had many clinicians, and I think there are probably many people here that are much better suited than I am to answering that question, but many of these rare diseases could actually be diagnosed phenotypically if people were aware of what to look for, and if they had access to a resource that can actually give them that information in an easy way. So I think some of the things we do need to look at deliberately are what are strategies that are available to countries that may not necessarily have the high technology that we can be talking about, but where are some of the actual opportunities to do that? I think the other thing we talked about is how do we encourage companies that are actually developing products to actually think deliberately in their development. How do we include countries? And we know that many of these countries are begging for, how do you include us in clinical trials? How do you actually invest in the development of services so that we can actually have a start there? And many of the companies have been very, very proactive in terms of having programs. Obviously, they cannot have programs everywhere, but actually also investing them in the clinical services that will help you create a community that can actually be able to do that. So I think you're right. I don't know, other people may have some other comments, or may have the groups here that can answer.
Because I am a pediatrician. So
yeah.
And I'm aware that the clinicians, pediatricians are very well in this country because they don't have diagnosis. So in Holland, where we're getting lazy, we ask for DNA. They have to do it themselves. So we can learn from them. But they are desperate in need for cheaper diagnosis and cheaper therapy. I think we can, rich countries can push that. Because we will pay anyway, but they can't.
Good point. Thank you very much. Lewin.
I just wanted to follow up that.
Yes.
Well, you know that what was raised is an issue that is of high concern for me as well. But I think that collaboration with a technical agency like WHO is really important in that respect. They have initiatives like the Essential Medicines List and the Assistive Products Lists that is definitely targeting lower income countries and trying to identify those interventions that have the highest impact on the lowest cost.
Great, thank you very much. Okay. Lots of questions and comments coming around. Okay.
Andre, members of World Alliance of Pituitary Organizations. I have seen the initiatives of identifying the undiagnosed people as a specific population I think it's an amazing initiative. Can you comment something on this? Like, where is this now?
Is there anyone here from?
Yeah, trying to see if there is no Virginie Ross or someone. Or who are you in the room? Who doesn't? No left.
Yeah, because it is like for pituitary diseases, it's a huge problem,
Yes.
like diagnosis, and there's a huge population, especially in developed countries, that is undiagnosed.
No, I was trying to find someone more competent than I have on that area. But in fact, there is several elements. There is the international network, as you know, which has been created now for undiagnosed. So that brings together different actors like NIH, like research programs in Europe and from Australia and patient groups. And we have developed this declaration for undiagnosed, which has now been adopted also by RDI, so that gives it more weight. So we want to use this undiagnosed issue, and now getting to the UN with that, to the WHO, is a real long shot, obviously, because already they have difficulties to address diseases which are identified. So that's where. But it was important for us that we had this international, one of the first papers adopted beyond the undiagnosed, in order to support the efforts of academic, but also of funders, public funders, and private funders, with the William Foundation and others that are working in that direction. I'm not sure I answered the question, but just to say why we're doing it. Now, how much we can achieve internationally as RDI, honestly, I would not oversell it. I don't think we can achieve much. What we can do is to push up the issue, to support the people who are really doing it and playing it, to make sure that it becomes part of the policy in every member state.
There are several sessions that will be taking place at the Congress to follow that really will be focusing, including the urea networks, etc. So there, within the program, there are several places in which the issue of diagnosis and underdiagnosed and undiagnosed, and including underdiagnosed and undiagnosed in terms of low middle income countries. So, and don't know off the top in terms of what all those sessions are, but we know that there are several places in which that is there. So you might really want to take the opportunity to maybe look at which of those sessions are and really address some of the experts that will be speaking there. But I think you're right in raising it, because it is the most important initiative, is that we can't do anything unless we actually get diagnosis. And I think trying to find ways, as we're all talking about, whether we're leveraging the technology or improving the capacities and at that ground level, is hugely important. Yeah.
Okay.
Is that a related comment there? Or?
Yes, exactly.
Yes, okay. We'll follow the train a little bit then, if you don't mind. Sorry to interrupt other people who've got questions. Maybe we'll follow the train for a moment just to make sure we've got it. Yes.
Hi?
Yeah.
Okay, I will make
Wait, we need a microphone too. We'll throw the microphone and all of the candies in the back there. Yeah. Can we get? We'll keep another microphone in the back. Yeah.
Okay, hi, my name is Clarissa. I'm a medical doctor from Argentina. I'm collaborating with patients with rare diseases, and we are anxious, we're willing to have this kind of collaboration you were saying from Holland, because we have our strengths, but in Latin America, we don't have access sometimes to the diagnosis and the treatments, so we are willing to have this type of collaborations. We are open to start alliances, collaborative alliances, especially for our researchers. So I'm happy you said that.
So only to complement, my name is Amina Chavez from Colombia. We need Latin America to work regionally. It's different to Europe that you have the United, you have the European Union and you have the policies for Europe. You know, the rare diseases, maybe some of the rare diseases networks and everything. In Latin America, I think in Asia, it's different now because each country is defining its public policy that is different. The concept of rare disease is different in each country, and the policies are displayed in all the countries. So it's so difficult the access to the medicines, access to the treatments. Maybe each stakeholder is dispersed. So we need really to translate the models and everything that are used in Europe in Latin America. But for that, we need Rare Disease International and the concepts and everything in order to push the multilateral and global organizations, but saying the same, with the same discourse and everything. And the leadership is so important too in our regions, because we have the custom to work maybe individual ways. So it's going to be great that Rare Disease International help us to construct this kind of movements in Latin America.
Thank you very much. And I just want to interrupt for half a second. We introduced Angela Chevas before she actually walked back into the room, but I just want to acknowledge Angela as one of our new council members for RDI. So everything she's saying is actually something she's committed to doing for RDI. So there we be. Thank you very much, Angela.
Yeah. Jan, thank you for your recommendation, but I think insight and next...
Would you mind introducing yourself first? Sorry. I know you introduced yourself earlier to the other audience, but in this audience as well?
Yeah. Inside or beside of I'm Dr. Edrak, because morning I presented to you. I'm Dr. Edrak, neuroradiologist and professor of radiology in Tehran University from Europe. Jan, I think near the insight of WHO activity, we need to upgrading and refreshing of rare disorder science in medical university, because the site of training of rare disease is too rich in medical sciences. I recommended in any specialty in university, one chapter only belonged to rare disease, and any specialist training of rare disorder. Last year in Vienna, because I contributed in the ECR radiology in Vienna, near this semester, I recommended to Professor Reiser, the chairman of ECR in Vienna, one session, one workshop, and one hall belonged to rare disease. And he accepted. And now, one workshop is represented for the all-of instrument, diagnostic test, and Siemens Bayer factory represented the newest tools for early detection of rare disease. I think about that.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Alba Cochea. I come from the Spanish Federation of Rare Diseases, Rare Diseases Spain. I'm also a representative with Juan Carreon from the Euro-American Alliances of Rare Diseases. And in terms of including rare diseases in World Health Organization policies, it's essential to raise awareness among countries, among member states, because finally the one who is going to vote that proposal are going to be member states. So we should all contribute by raise awareness with our countries and our representatives in the United Nations and World Health Organization permanent missions. And also I think that the Rare Disease Day could be a great tool to do it, and we should take the chance to include this message, and all we should share the same message, because something that we have also checked is that our representatives at the United Nations is a word that stuck. The United Nations and World Health Organization appreciated a lot that we were all together, that Rare Disease International really joins the whole globe, and we really represent geographical diversity. So it's really important when we have a meeting with our representatives in our countries to show that we are all the countries together, and we don't just represent our geographical area.
So I think ALPA speaks really strongly from real experience, and it's been a huge asset in terms of the Spanish organization to be liaising with their ministry, with their Ministry of Health, with their mission as well. And I know when Clara and I were visiting there, the first thing, I mean, we were able to make a real strong representation in Spain because you've already done all the groundwork, and we could point back to what's been done. The same in Colombia, where there's a really good relationship with the ministry, and we were able to say very clearly that this has already been taking place. So I think, as we're saying, is that when you're doing your rare disease activities, it is difficult, obviously, to get to your governments. It's difficult to get to your ministry, but it's so worth the effort. And maybe, as we're saying, with RDI and with the recognition at the NGO and the member organizations coming down to help us, but we need to also be able to do it, because we get into the door a lot easier if we're able to say yes. Our member organizations have talked to your Minister of Health, have talked to your ministry back home. They're aware of what it is we're doing here. It makes all the difference in the world, and with many other entities, including the WHO. So there's the UN and the WHO. And the more you're able to get the message to your representatives, the more it is able to help us in terms of trying to work together globally. So big thanks to already what the advice is actually based on real experience and real progress, so we appreciate that a lot.
Yeah, hello, thank you for interesting presentations. My name is Inge Westerheim, and today I'm representing the Osteogenesis Imperfecta Federation Europe. But in my normal day job, I work as a political advisor in the Disability Alliance in Norway. And we are one of the countries that don't have a rare disease umbrella, but our alliance have 82 member organizations, and 30 of those are for rare diseases, approximately. And we are in charge of doing the reports to the UN, as the community's NGOs report for the CRPD. And I thought that it occurred to me that we should probably be more conscious about the rare disease organization's role in this reporting, because it tends to be the bigger organizations, the Blind Union, the bigger organizations that have a voice in the community's reporting in this process. But I think also that it's important to reflect the rare disease community when we are reporting on the status of rare diseases in the country for the UN.
Thank you very much, and thank you for that insight as well. I think we have been trying to figure out that. Maybe Jan, you can speak to it a bit as well, in terms of how, or Lula maybe, how we're trying to actually integrate with regard to the work that's being done in terms of disabilities, because you're very right. I mean, it's true in many of these areas, right? There's rare diseases that are within it, but we tend to be, as we are in our health services, as we are in terms of many of the other kinds of social and other kinds of programs, rare gets lost in the broader context. So we need to make much more of a deliberate effort in terms of highlighting the rare diseases. But maybe Jan or Lewin, you can speak to that, Lewin?
Well, the point that Phil raised was, she made a reference to the reporting system at the CRPD. And that is the big advantage of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. It gives a legal framework. And countries are bound to legal framework. The SDGs have the disadvantage that it's for everybody, everywhere, all the time, and it's a voluntary process. So there might be references, and you can say, well, SDGs about health, and there's the one about nationality for registration, and there's other hooks, but they're voluntary. And the CRPD it's a legal instrument. Once you ratify, you have to come in front of a committee that evaluates the progress you make. And that's the reference she made, is that you get this loop for improvement. But it's a long-term process. And the disability community has the advantage of having the CRPD as the legal umbrella for all these initiatives, and the rare disease community does not have it unless they use the CRPD. I'm a big advocate of using CRPD for the rare disease community, because it overlaps for 90%. So it's the same thing.
So are we actually in a position of having rare diseases actually reference actually being included, or how? I mean, I know we're working towards that, but where are
the CRPD is not defining specific target groups, so it's for everybody. So if Rare Disease International would make a comment, and especially the disability, the committee at the Office for the High Commissioner for Human Rights is very open for civil society. So there are no boundaries. Of course, it's stronger if you go together with the disability councils in every country, but you don't have to.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think as we were talking about previously, that the right to health is actually now included, Target 25 in the CRPD. So this is something that we can build on as well. So that's, and I know that we have contributed as RDI to the definitions in there. So that's really important. And I think, as we said, for the first time, we've actually got the right to health as part of that convention. So it's a big opportunity for us to make sure that we get rare disease.
We met disability.
Hold on, 2 seconds. 2 seconds. 2 seconds. Okay. There you go. No, continue.
No, I totally agree. We have met also in Geneva, the Organization for Disability, and first they looked a little surprised. Then when we described what we wanted, then they again opened up and said, yeah, let's fight together.
Just to follow up, maybe it's on the same topic.
I totally agree with the gentleman who mentioned CRPD. And yes, for SDG, it is a goal, a goal that means you can achieve, you may not be able to achieve. But CRPD is a legal treaty. If the state government signed and the parliament ratified, the state, the government has the responsibility to implement the convention in the country. And also, the CRPD treats the human as human, not only a health issue or a social issue or whatever. It's a holistic approach to the human, including patients with rare diseases. As the gentleman said, over 90% of rare disease patients should be people with disabilities. I also work with the Geneva UN CRPD committee some years ago, and I also found that they are very open to the civil society. So this is a good approach. I agree.
Did you want to add anything to that, Jan?
Yeah, just to say thank you first, because that's a very useful discussion really to follow up on CRPD. We experience and take-home message from the first interactions with the UN Special Rapporteur on Disability, but also with the International Disability Alliance, is that we have first an issue of language, of terminology to understand each other. And that when we share that with even another colleagues, that the lesson is really that we need to do the efforts from the rare disease community by working maybe with colleagues like Ute, KP, or Leben and others to understand more the concepts used and the terminology so that we come back with something which is articulated and can be heard and understood. So we didn't find any resistance of principle, but we find it difficult to fit. And the only fit we had so far was, as Leben said, it's more that because the rapporteur are very open to human rights, to civil society, is to make that contribution on the report on health in disability policy. So that's a hook to get into it. Now that's not enough. So working specifically maybe on the CRDP, maybe a very good concrete pragmatic approach, while at the same time we develop dialogue with the Disability Alliance. Because to be successful, we need to work with them.
And to be really also broad is that disabilities are not necessarily limited to physical disabilities or motor disabilities. We're talking about disabilities defined much more broadly. So I think those are really important. I think the challenge with rare diseases, obviously, is that rare disease, the whole collection of diseases. We're not talking about a specific type of disability, but we're also talking about the fact that for most rare diseases, as we've been talking about here, underdiagnosed, underrecognized, underserviced. So disability from the point of view of actually getting the right access is really another part of it. So I think the social isolation, the economic isolation is also a huge part of what it is that we're trying to represent for all persons with rare diseases. It's an important opportunity, I think, to contribute to that work. Other comments? Yeah, sure.
I think Jan mentioned it in his slides, but he's very right. There is another language that the two communities speak. I mean, in the rare disease community, it's about, for example, access to treatments or cures. And if there's a word that's supposed to be banned in the disability community, it's cure. You know, they're very afraid of like a medical approach to disability. So it's the issues are the same, but it's like from a different angle. And the risk is that that you're not talking to each other, but past each other.
Absolutely, and our challenge at this point is fitting into the work that the disabilities community has already been able to do to make sure that we're able to fit into that. And obviously over time, I think, as you say, evolving towards some of those common languages, showing those common goals. Okay, other comments there?
Because in my last part of the WHO, on purpose, I was not very detailed, which is a frustration because we've been late for different reasons. Normally, we should have had the consultation on this draft of the WHO before this meeting on tonight. So that's why we obliged to stop there. It's mostly due to my absence, to be honest. So that's the reason. But it's all right, we'll do it after. But what I want to mention is that in the next 2 days, in the track 6, you can have different topics which are directly relevant to that. One of them, for instance, is the centers of expertise and international network. So how do we move, I'm speaking for the Europeans, how do we move from European reference networks to global networks? But if I take it from the perspective from Japan, Austria, or other countries where you have centers of expertise already established and sometimes networks, how do we progressively connect these networks at the global level? So what would be the criteria to say this hospital center, university hospital center, is a center of excellence? And what would be the criteria to become part of a global network? But also how we're going to use the new technologies around digital technologies to create this network and bring the expertise to the patients more around the world, to reduce time of diagnosis, etc. So that's the kind of conversation that we're introducing in the WHO proposal. Essential medicine that was mentioned by Ivan also, we're having discussion with them on this issue. I know Iran and others are active on that. And one of the ideas that we're discussing with them, which our friends from industry are going to love, is the idea of bringing together 20 or 30 countries to negotiate together, to do bargaining together on the price of some of the medicines. So it's not going to be for the medicines that you in this room are selling, because that's too high priced and innovative, but more for the medicines which are well established for some of the rare diseases. They are pretty cheap, they are well established, there is no safety issue, and still they are not available to all patients in the world when they should. So let's get together, and WHO has had experience on that with some vaccines or some tropical diseases or HIV, and now they are changing their mindset. They realize that they have been pushing the industry and the price too low, and that is not sustainable. So now they recognize that, and they want to have something which is more fair, but they consider that their role is to bring together the member states to negotiate. And we are discussing doing it for some rare diseases as pilots in the coming years, and maybe to create a framework of access.
Yeah, my name is Kees Smit from the European Genetic Alliance. A totally different topic. One of the Sustainable Development Goals is no hunger. That's number 2. And since a couple of years, the European Patient Forum and the European Genetic Alliance are working on the topic of nutrition. And this is a very disease-exceeding issue, and we were approached to work on it for people at an older age who were undernutrition. And then we said, well, we are not working with older people, we are most of the time working with young families and with preconception care, where lifestyle and good nutrition is important. So we are talking about nutrition maybe throughout the whole life cycle. And from that developed, let's say, an activity for all disease groups. And we have now got more funding, so the European Patient Forum is working much more on it, where we are looking to which are the guidelines and care standards for medical nutrition, but also for people who are, let's say, on not necessarily on medical nutrition, but have all kinds of other questions about what is good nutritional care for a particular disease. And we are now developing, for the end of the year, a guidance document where we collect all the relevant guidelines and care standards about that. So if there is interest for that to work on, let's say, the topic of nutrition and medical nutrition, through the European Patient Forum, we have, let's say, a channel to address that.
Thank you very, very much, Kees. And as we all know, in the rare diseases, there's a huge spectrum in which nutrition plays a hugely important role, even with some of the rare diseases where, in fact, because of the inability to actually uptake certain types of foods, focusing on the right foods, especially from birth and early age, can actually prevent certain kinds of symptoms and even prevent death in certain diseases. So there's a huge issue around those issues, as well as the nutritional supplements, etc., that are essential to some of the rare diseases. So I think those are certainly areas that we can have a big toehold, but as you say, nutrition through the life cycle is a really important issue as well. So again, something that could be really relevant to low and middle income countries. So it's certainly not something that's limited to, highly technology, highly developed. So again, and maybe what Jan's talking about, how do we as a large rare disease community help to source some of those kinds of products that make them available much more globally. So that's another big area that we can play a role. Excellent, thank you. Other comments or thoughts? We're fastly running out of time. I'm not exactly sure if Paloma will be. We're right on time? 4 p.m.? Okay, so we're supposed to have a wrap up at some point, but are there any other comments? I know that we've got such a great set of participants here that it would, we could probably keep you for another couple of hours, but we'll probably have a revolt at that point. Any other comments or thoughts that you wanted to add to this? And anybody that has a vital comment they would like to add, they've not had a chance to contribute yet. Whoops, okay, before Ritu destroys the front of the stage here, maybe I'll use this as are we wrapping up, Paloma? Okay, so let me just sort of close this. This has been the most amazing gathering. I think next year we would need to absolutely book a bigger room, unless you guys have decided this was absolutely no value and you're never coming back again. But we're hoping that's not the case. This is really the beginning for us. We're hoping that, as I think I put in the slides here, we're hoping that we actually can have a global event for around Rare Disease Day for 2019. We're going to be putting out some materials to really hope that you can engage your own countries and your own missions to actually take an active role in terms of participating in that. And we definitely want to make sure that as we're moving through the year, that as we're talking about some of these consultation documents, etc., that people have an opportunity to play an active role. Definitely, if you have other ideas, you have other suggestions, you have other initiatives that you're working on that you feel we should be aware of, do bring them. We thought, I think Bloom was mentioning earlier, we're going to have a Facebook that's going to be for the members that we can really use as a dialogue page, but definitely bring forth other ideas and you can bring them to Paloma, you can bring them to any of us, that are on the council, and certainly we really hope that you will be actively engaged as we put out other materials and other initiatives. So on behalf of the entire council, I really, really would like to thank you for your active participation, and we'll look forward to your ongoing engagement with Rare Disease International as we move forward. Thank you very much. If anyone wants a chocolate, you are welcome to come up here.
J'ai dû bouger parce qu'il y avait trop de monde.